Hello, dear students. Today we'll be learning about chapter number 9 from your history textbook, Vital Villages, Thriving Towns. In the previous chapters, we've been learning about the kingdoms and the kings and the cities in which they live. The rise of new kingdoms and towns led to an increase in agriculture and trade. It resulted in the growth of new towns. Therefore, we'll be focusing on the vital villages and the thriving towns in this chapter. The two major changes that occur in the towns and villages were the increasing use of iron, and the development in farming was mainly around irrigation. Iron. The use of iron can be traced back 3,000 years, with the growing use reflecting some 2,500 years ago. These iron tools included axes for clearing forests and the iron plowshares, which were mostly used for increasing agricultural production. Some of the largest collection of iron tools and weapons have been found in the megalithic burials.
What is a megalith?
A megalith is a large stone that has been used to construct a structure or a monument. It is either used alone or together with other stones. And these stones are huge. Megalith means big stones. Megaliths in India are dated before 3000 BC, with recent findings dating back to 5000 BC in southern India. Megaliths are found in almost all parts of southern India. There is also a broad time evolution with these megaliths in central India and the upper Indus Valley, where the oldest megaliths are found, while those in the east are much of a later date. A larger fraction of these is assumed to be associated with burials or post-burial rituals, including memorials of those whose remains may or may not be available. Therefore, the megaliths in India are prevalent throughout the Deccan, South India, in the northeast, and in Kashmir. Other steps to increase production. Well, the kings and kingdoms needed the support of the flourishing villages to exist. Without them, they would not have existed. And what made a village flourish? The increase in production or the good quality grains that were grown in the villages made a village flourishing. What helped in increasing the production? The new tools of iron plowshares were used to increase the production, along with the system of transplantation and irrigation. The increase in production happened because of the changes in the agriculture practices. The two major changes in these agriculture practices were the growing use of iron plowshares, which were better than a wooden plowshare to turn over heavy and clayey soil. Therefore, more grain could be produced using an iron plowshare. The other change that took place in agriculture in this era was that the people began transplanting paddy or rice. Instead of scattering seeds on the ground from which the plants would sprout, the people started growing saplings somewhere else, and then when they were grown, they were planted in the field. This led to the increase in production of the rice, as many more plants survived. Along with the use of iron plowshares and transplanting paddy, irrigation was also one of these methods that helped in increasing the production. To facilitate the practice of irrigation, many works were built during this period of time. The canals, wells, tanks, and artificial lakes were some of these methods through which irrigation was promoted, and which helped in increasing the production of the grains in the village areas. We talked about the major changes that took place in the villages, the practices that changed, the agricultural practices that changed. But who did these changes? Who followed these changes? Who lived in these villages? Well, there were at least three different types of people who lived in most villages in the southern and northern part of the subcontinent. Let us first look at the southern region, which is also known as the Tamil region. In the Tamil region, the large landowners were known as vellalars. The ordinary plowmen who worked on the fields were known as uzavar. And the third category were known as kadaisiyar and adimai. This category included the landless laborers and the slaves as well.
So basically, the three people that lived in the villages, or the three types of people that existed in the southern part of the villages in India, were that of the Velalars, large landowners, the Uzavars, who were the ordinary plowmen, and those who were not as big as the Velalars. Then the third category was of the Kadaisiars and Adimai, who served these people, who were the landless laborers and the slaves.
All of these words are Tamil words which are found in the Sangam literature. The Sangam literature. The Sangam literature was composed around 2300 years ago. They are considered to be one of the earliest works in the Tamil language. But why did the name Sangam? Sangam was chosen as its name because it is assumed that they were probably composed and compiled in assemblies, hence the name Sangam. The assemblies were of the poets, and it was held in the city of Madurai. With this, we move on to the northern part, or the northern region. We learned about the three stages or three categories in the southern subcontinent. Now, in the northern subcontinent, the village composed of the Gram Bhojak. The Gram Bhojak was supposed to be the village headman. This post was hereditary, which meant that the men from the same family held the position for generations, and generally the Gram Bhojak was often the largest landowner. It is the similar case that was followed in the southern portion. The largest landowner was like a village headman in the southern portion as well. Generally, the Gram Bhojak had slaves and hired workers to cultivate the land, just as the Velalars in the southern part. A Gram Bhojak was considered to be very powerful. So, seeing the power of the Gram Bhojak, the king used to make him the collector of taxes from the villagers. As the Gram Bhojak was so powerful, he sometimes also functioned as the judge and sometimes as the policeman for the village as well. Other than the Gram Bhojak, there existed Grihabatis. The Grihabatis were the independent farmers or the smaller landowners. Grihabatis didn't have as much big of a land as the Gram Bhojaks. And naturally, they were not as rich as the Gram Bhojaks. They worked or cultivated on their own land. The third category in this region were that of the Das Karmakaras. In this category, the men and women who did not own their own land and had to earn a living by working on the fields owned by others came in this category. Other than these three types of people that existed in the northern part of the villages, there existed the people who were the craft persons. These craft persons were the blacksmiths, the weavers, potters, and the carpenters. So, we can say that the northern region and the southern region were similar to each. How did we get the information about these cities? The stories, the accounts of the travelers, this remained scriptures, and archaeology helps us in finding more about these cities that existed. Jatak stories that were probably composed by ordinary people and then were written down and preserved by Buddhist monks. The sculptures carved scenes depicting people's life in towns and villages as well as in the forest, which were used to decorate railings, pillars, and gateways of buildings that were visited by people. The rows of pots or ceramic rings arranged one on top of the other, known as ring wells, were used as toilets in some cases and as drains and garbage dumps in some others. Also, the accounts of sailors and travelers who visited the early cities also provide an information about the past. We'll be learning more about these accounts in detail in your online classes. So, with this, we come to the end of this video.